Welcome back. You're watching To The Point, and we're discussing One Rank, One Pension, which was notified on Saturday but clearly hasn't met with universal approval, and the agitations continue, with Chief Minister Kejriwal joining the agitationists this afternoon at Jantar Mantar. Comments made by the Defence Minister today. He held what looked like a press conference, and he said something that suggested that the time had come for the ex-servicemen who were protesting to prove that their continuing protest wasn't political. To me, it sounded as if there was a hint there, maybe more than a hint, of the Defence Minister questioning the motivations of those still protesting. I'm going to put that question to you, General Malik. How do you respond to that comment by the Defence Minister today on television?
Look, the problem is that at the moment we seem to have a confrontationist approach from the people who are at Jantar Mantar, and also I have to say that the defence ministers and other political leaders, this dismissive attitude is also not correct. I find the attitude from both sides is not conducive to resolving this whole issue and stopping this agitation as early as possible, which is in the interest of the whole nation. So I feel that both sides need to come down a few steps and talk to each other and resolve these one or two major issues, and it must stop thereafter. This whole agitation, the threat being given by both sides, this is not correct. This is not the way to resolve the whole issue. So this whole issue of confrontation with the government and the government adopting a totally dismissive approach, I think it is not conducive to resolve this.
General Qadian, unfortunately, General Satbir Singh, who had accepted our invitation to join us, has been unable to do so. I believe, in fact, he's caught up at Jantar Mantar with the protest. But the question I want to put to you is this, because your views differ significantly from those of General Satbir Singh. Has this movement now slipped into the hands of a small fringe, perhaps I should use the word extremist group, that's taking a needlessly rigid confrontational stand? Or is that a wrong interpretation on my part?
Karan, we started this movement and this, I won't call it a protest, this struggle at Jantar Mantar from 2008 onwards. There are certain principles we followed. Number one, we kept the movement absolutely apolitical. We did not permit a single politician to come and share the stage at Jantar Mantar, which was an ex-serviceman stage. Today, unfortunately, there are people out of the group at Jantar Mantar who are hobnobbing with the politicians, and the Veterans Munch has become a political fishing ground for rival political parties. There are also rumors, and I would like to underscore the point, rumors that some of the funding is coming from the political parties. The second issue, which is even more serious as far as the country is concerned, we always made a distinction. We said this is an issue pertaining to the veterans and we have no involvement of the serving people. Unfortunately, today there has been an open call many times invoking the fear of the dissatisfaction spreading to the serving. That is like holding a gun to the head of the government and demanding whatever we are asking for. Unfortunately, the governments don't matter, they come and go. But it is against the national interest to use any such language. Okay. And if I may use the word, it is nothing short of treason. That must be curbed. You said very rightly, the people who are now sitting there is a small fringe, even Nitin said so, Nitin Gokhale. That is absolutely fact. The vast majority are happy. After all, the issue has been hanging fire for 40 years, another 6 months till the end of the Judicial Commission are not very material. And if at the end the government still does not satisfy, we will have a greater right to come back to Jantar Mantar.
Let me stop you. I want to bring in Mr. Ajay Prasad. Mr. Ajay Prasad, today, as sort of corroboration of the Defence Minister's suggestion that the movement needs to prove it's not political, Mr. Kejriwal, the Chief Minister of Delhi, turned up at Jantar Mantar to lend his support. Clearly, to the Defence Minister, that will look like politicization. You heard General Qadian suggest that there are rumours that, in fact, the movement, such as it is being funded by political parties. And you also heard General Qadian say that some of the positions they're taking are nothing short of treason. Does it worry you that the movement is perhaps falling into dangerous hands and becoming a political football between parties, and therefore something much more incendiary?
No, it is very disturbing to see some of these developments take place. I must add that I have also, in some private conversations, heard this fact that some funding is coming from political parties. Of course, I have no way of verifying this. But if it is so, it is very, very disturbing. This was, as General Kadia very rightly said, a totally apolitical movement, and it should have remained so. Now, the only saving grace I would think is that because the numbers now that are left agitating is a very small number, the large majority of ex-servicemen have accepted the decision of the government, and I think as the public sympathy and the support wears thin as days go by, I think these people will be forced to reconsider their position and either call off the strike. Now, as far as the suggestion that General Malik had made some time back about a long dialogue taking place between the government and these people, I feel personally that as far as the question of premature retirements are concerned, it's a matter of a clarification, which the government should consider without having the necessity of referring the matter to the Judicial Commission.
Okay.
But basic tinkering with the equalization proposal of 5 years or something, that's a basic tenet of this whole policy decision. And I don't think a dialogue at this stage with the Defense Ministry will solve this problem. This is something which will have to go to the Judicial Commission. But to enable any kind of conversation to take place, the agitation must stop.
Okay.
I think the government will be right in insisting on this.
Let me put to you, Nalin Kohli, a point I made earlier to Nitin Gokhale. If there is going to be some sort of conversation or dialogue between the two sides, the initiative has to come from the government, because the government is the more important party. Do you think Mr. Parikar could do that? Issue an invitation to 5-6 people, sit down with them. If they refuse, they'll embarrass him by themselves by refusing. So why not take that initiative?
Well, Mr. Thapar, perhaps because governance is not played as like a program. That, let's issue it and see what happens. Governments and that's how a 40-year-old problem could be resolved in 15, 16 months. It takes effort, and there has to be a clarity of what you're doing. It's not a small amount, 8 to 10,000 crores. We understand what the economic condition is, but that doesn't mean that we don't owe it to our ex-servicemen and deliver what we promised and what they deserve. It's not also as if they don't deserve it. They deserve every bit of it. Now, what's the next step further? And I thank General Kadian for those very frank, open and honest comments. Perhaps a thought comes to me in a personal thought that why don't we see the opposite view to this entire hardline position and this extremist voice, which is also giving disrepute to the servicemen in that sense, burning medals, and there will be disaffection within the armed forces. A sensible lot of people coming out there and putting out a positive message. And as I said, the Prime Minister, no less than the Prime Minister, the Defence Minister before that, the door appears to be open because there is a Judicial Commission, something that has been hanging fire for 40 years plus, done in 15 months. Can't 6 months be a reasonable time for it?
Very quickly, as a journalist, how do you see this issue playing out over the next few weeks and months?
I think the support will dwindle because, as I said, majority of the ex-servicemen are happy. They're saying what we couldn't get for 40 years, at least we got something. Yes, the government needs to come halfway on a couple of issues, as mentioned by the former generals here and by Mr. Ajay Prasad. And I agree that the PMR issue needs to be clarified, and I think the government can do it. But as far as the 5-year equalization or 1-year equalization is concerned, I think it's a technical issue, and it's also a question of the principle. And therefore, it will take time, it will go to the Judicial Commission. As it plays out, I think the agitation must be called off if there has to be an honest dialogue between the government and the ex-servicemen.
General Malik, I'm going to end with you, and I'm going to remind you of something you said many times on my program, that you are increasingly worried about the state of civil-military relations in the country. Earlier, you've also said you're worried about the impact this whole issue is having on serving officers and serving Jawans. Now, given that background, how important is a speedy resolution? Because at the moment, the indication I get is that the defense minister isn't likely to take an initiative, and those protesting, even if they're a minority, are not going to go knocking on his door. So it doesn't look as if either side want to actually say, how important is a speedy resolution? How important is it that pride should be put aside?
No, I think the pride should be put aside by both sides. And my fear is that the agitationists may let, this whole agitation may go out of their control and get into some totally undesirable activities which must be stopped. And I have a feeling that this initiative should be taken by the government to the extent that they can call some of them, and they can also call some neutral people to be able to resolve this. Continuing with this kind of a thing for long is not in the interest of the nation, and it is not in the interest of the government. While I agree with Nalin Kohli when he said that the government function in a particular fashion, but it is also the job of the government to ensure that such undesirable activities are not permitted to carry on. They have to solve this. And I think that it is not a very big issue today, which it can be resolved by just taking up one or two out of those 7 demands which are being made. And reasonable people should be able to help the government to stop that. And I think that it is time that we should stop that. This whole hard attitude from both sides is not going to help anyone at all.
Very quickly, General Saab, because this is going to have to be the last question. When you said the government have to solve it, are you suggesting the initiative to do so must come from the defense minister? Or am I overinterpreting you?
No, I think the government can take the initiative in whichever way they like to do it. But obviously, as I can say it, Satbir and all his people, they are wanting to meet people. And there are some people who are not permitting them to meet the minister. So I don't think we should stand on this kind of a formality that, no, I will not meet you and let somebody else come and meet you. No, it's an important issue which needs to be resolved as early as possible. And obviously the government is the senior people, so they should take the initiative in this case.
That's a perfectly clear answer. We'll have to leave this particular episode there. My thanks to all my guests for joining me, and I'm sorry that General Satbir wasn't there to join us to represent his view, which is clearly very different to that of General Qadian. My thanks to all of you who've been watching. Goodbye. Good night.
Nisagama manipamaga Nipama, nipama, gasa, nipama, nisapasa. जहाँ तक यादें याद आती रहेगी